This is Dentist Money. Now, here's your host, Reese Harper.
Welcome to the Dentist Money Show, where we help dentists make smart financial decisions. I'm your host, Reese Harper, here with my trusty old co-host, Sir Ryan Isaac.
Getting comfortable in new chairs today.
I figured that the producers decided we must have finally made enough money to give us a seat to sit in.
Yeah, except for we didn't buy these. We just got them
these
from
were
another
found
room.
in an old storage shed.
These were in another room in the
up the street. For those of you who are not watching live in the viral YouTube channel that we launched, you do not know that we are sitting in comfortable chairs.
We are. Today.
We used to be in really uncomfortable stools.
Started at a desk.
Started at a wooden desk. They made a stand.
We stood.
Occasionally, they poked us with a cattle prawn and said, "Dance, monkey, dance."
Is it really prawn?
Yeah, prong.
Prod.
I think it's prod.
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 Oh, I thought you said prawn. P-R-O-N.
I think I did.
Okay.
Just so listeners know, I do make mistakes with word choice occasionally.
All right, but we're sitting down. We're comfortable today. It's very nice to be here.
And we're going to talk about
pain.
The other comfortable place you go, the doctor's office.
Yeah. So my daughter, I have an 8-year-old daughter, who's named after a famous Disney princess, Elsa, Queen Elsa.
Yeah, you actually named her after you saw the movie Frozen. That was what I heard. You enjoyed the movie so much.
No, she's 4. She was 4 when that movie came out, and no one believed her that her real name was Elsa after that movie came out. Everyone at school, when we enrolled her in kindergarten, thought we were calling her that name because she wanted to be called that because of the movie.
Interesting. You should have called up Disney and told them they stole that name from you.
It was a family name. It's been in the family for hundreds of years. So my 8-year-old daughter Elsa, so she was, I mean, you know how this goes. She was playing the classic game of horsey at recess one day.
A vintage classic.
A vintage classic. On all fours with her friends, they were playing horsey. And she rolled on her wrist playing horsey.
Okay.
A little hole in the grass or something. And so she said her wrist was hurting, and it was hurting for a couple weeks. She was having a hard time playing piano and writing. So we take her into the doctor, just kind of general doctor. I don't know. It was one of those care
family
centers.
Practice?
Yeah, family practice doctor.
Yeah.
And, kind of like pinches the side of her thumb by her wrist, and it hurt a lot. And so it was clearly like a wrist problem, right? Like I rolled my wrist playing horsey. And so run some x-rays, couldn't really see anything in the wrist on the x-rays. But he put this like not a cast, but it was a pretty hard brace so that she couldn't move her wrist, and it stopped about mid forearm. So she's got this like restrictive thing on her wrist, so her hand can't move, and it goes up to about her forearm. She has that on for like 3 weeks, and every night she still complains about her wrist hurting. Now, though I feel really bad as a parent, she tends to be a little bit more of my emotional child.
Yeah,
and she likes to express herself through crying multiple times a day.
So you thought she was exaggerating.
So me and my wife both thought she was exaggerating like every day about she couldn't write and she didn't want to play the piano anymore, but her wrist was stable. So
and you're like, you're gonna write.
You're gonna
do this dang homework. You're gonna practice that instrument and get to school.
This poor kid, man. So 3 weeks it goes on like this, and she just still complains that it hurts and hurts. Finally, we take her back to the same doctor. And he runs another x-ray. He's like, I still can't see any break in the wrist, and we can cast it. Let's throw a permanent cast on this thing. Maybe some more, just a more rigid cast would provide the stabilization and make it heal. But he said, gosh, before I do that, how about you just go see an arm specialist, a wrist specialist? Who would that be? I don't know what they're called.
Well, the orthopedic doctors do
Yes,
that?
that's who it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a lot about this, but
we're guessing. Yeah. He just said go see someone who sees this stuff more frequently. So we take her there, and in less than 2 minutes, he grabs the wrist again. Does this hurt? She's like, yeah, it kind of hurts. And then he goes to the elbow, and he pinches the elbow, and she's like, oh my gosh, that hurts. Like that was clearly the source of pain. So
so he went from the wrist up to the elbow and checked
in like 30 seconds. As soon as the wrist hurt, he didn't stop there. It wasn't like, oh, that's where it hurts, we're done. He went right to the elbow, kind of knowing that there's other sources of pain. He's obviously seen this before. Runs an x-ray, the elbow's broken, or one of the bones in the elbow. Again, non-expert here talking.
Some kind of a tarsal?
Some kind of a tarsal. What's a tarsal?
It's a metatarsal.
That's right.
I think that's in your foot, though, so I don't think that's an elbow.
The old metatarsal. So it turns out that it's a problem with the elbow. She gets this kind of brace that keeps her elbow locked in a bent position, and then we wrap it. And she's had that for a week, and it's like she feels so much better.
Yeah.
You know, like the pain it's actually gone. She doesn't complain about the pain. She can kind of write with her hand, and she's getting better, you know. So we were talking about this and how oftentimes in a dentist situation, there's pain that's felt financially, right? And could be, we'll talk about some of these, but it could be business, it could be, you know, in cash flow, it could be with taxes, it could be with investments. There's a pain that's being felt. But a lot of times we notice from conversations that the pain that's being felt is getting blamed on a source that isn't the real true source of the pain.
Yeah.
Right. And it takes maybe just further analysis or research or an expert to look at the pain and then to actually find the real source to diagnose it properly and give the real solution to fix it. So not putting a wrist brace on an elbow problem.
Yeah, I like it. Not putting a wrist elbow brace.
Tarsal.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm liking this metaphor, and I'm sorry to Elsa for her negligent father that
I do feel
was
really
abusive
bad
for the last couple weeks. Just know that,
man.
You know, we all know where you're coming from, Elsa.
Yeah.
Sometimes Ryan pokes us and tells us to go back to work too.
Like, get back to work. That's not real pain.
Yeah. And I'm like, I have a stomach ulcer. It really hurts. He's like, record your podcast.
Get in the studio.
Get it done.
We got a new chair. Sit in the studio. Stop complaining.
So let's talk about the first thing that we noticed that is the first source of pain that kind of, and I can relate to this too.
I wrote this for you.
I was like reading this outline for our show and realized that you basically just like gave me the story of my life and all the excuses I make. I think that's where you got all these.
Like some dentists complain about this, but this is mostly Reese.
Yeah. So first, there's a pain of I'm too busy or I'm so busy.
Yeah.
Or I've got way too much going on.
Yeah. The pain is like, I don't have enough time to get all my work done, or a dentist might say I'm neglecting the administrative tasks on my practice, or I'm not getting to marketing. I'm just too busy.
Yeah.
I can't get to it all.
Yeah, or I'm not advancing my clinical skills. Like I've just got too many things going on. And
yeah. Or my personal life is suffering. Like I have no personal life. You know, it's just getting eaten up by the business.
One of these things is getting strained, and the assumption that most people make, at least that I know I make a lot of the times, is that there's just way too much work for me and for one person, and I can't get to all of it. And that's the immediate assumption. I think dentists make that one quite often, and usually the conclusion that they arrive at most often is, if I just got an associate in here, if I could hire an associate, then it would solve the problem.
Yeah, right. Just someone else to do my job.
Yeah. And I'm not now that may be the right conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in my own circumstances, I know that if I wouldn't have done that at several times, the business would have never grown. But it was really crucial to do it at the right time, and to make sure that I was solving the right problem,
and to have some data backing up that assumption too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So instead of it being the immediate conclusion you reach that if you're busy, you hire an associate, what are some other thoughts that you kind of have seen, Ryan, that might be the solution to consider? And if there was a specialist like you analyzing it, I guess, what would you say? Look, before you just hire an associate, I want to make sure that these aren't really the problem.
Yeah. One of them would be, there's been a lot of our clients who have done like an insurance analysis in their business, and they've realized that by being more efficient with the insurance reimbursements that they accept in the practice, that they can maybe get rid of a few and slow down a little bit. So we've had clients who have done a good analysis in the practice, realized that they were taking insurance where they weren't profitable on. They were doing a lot of busy work, but they weren't making any progress. And by cutting a few or just making them more efficient, changing fee schedules, that they actually could see less patients, be less busy, but still be profitable and make, the same or more amounts of money.
Yeah, even
one little
and it doesn't have to be moved complete to fee for service. I mean, insurance is just a marketing decision that you got to make, but there's always a more efficient place to get to.
Yeah, that's a really specific
on a spectrum
example
from accept everything to be completely fee for service. That's a scale that you're always going to be able to progress to some degree to a better place where you're getting more money for each hour you're spending.
Yep.
And you might find that if you did that for a little while, you actually feel better. Mm-hmm. You feel like you're getting more money for your time and you're not quite as busy. You're able to see a few less patients and make a little bit more than you were.
And spend higher quality time with your patients, which is what a lot of people want to do.
And you'll get a little bit of that family time back and get a little bit of that business admin marketing time back.
Yeah.
So what's another thing that might be a solution before we just hire an associate?
Yeah. Well, another one might be, you might be too busy with non-clinical duties in the practice. There might, and this kind of bleeds into, it was episode 26 called 9 People Dentists Need to Know. So on the Dentist Money Show, if you go to dentistadvisors.com/listen, you can go search for these. But episode 26 was nine people that dentists need to know. It's basically who's on your team of people that can help alleviate some of the tasks that are on your plate.
Yeah.
Besides all, like you mentioned, keeping up on clinical skills and CE throughout a career is super important. It's crucial to the quality of work that your business, the practice provides. But there's a lot of other stuff outside of that, with marketing and admin and HR and kind of like team leading, and, you have accounting and financial planning and investments and legal. And so sometimes it's just a lack of, maybe you want to speak to this a little bit, just a lack of having people around you that are delegated really specific things to work on.
Yeah, I think for most people, there's always, at least in my experience, sometimes at least in our business, I've seen how as time has passed and people get more competent and capable at their jobs, that changes the amount of pressure that I feel. They're able to do more because they've specialized more and become more proficient in their job. And as their job is more narrow and more defined and more concrete, and the job description's more narrow, people are able to focus more and get better at their job, as opposed to have it maybe super broad and you always kind of feel like you're running a bunch of different
not able to focus on one thing. Yeah.
So a lot of times in a dental practice, you'll have one person that has too many tasks, and sometimes that person might be overcompensated for the many tasks they do, and that job could be 2 jobs. Or sometimes you just might see that you're underinvesting in a person and expecting them to do too much. And you might even need to double the amount that you're willing to spend on these admin, business management and marketing and front office responsibilities. That's typically the more common solution. I mean, keep in mind that if you could stay focused, if you're this type of person that's kind of finding yourself being dragged into the business operations, your time really can be worth as much as $1,000 or more an hour, and so if you really need to view your time that way, and if it's not worth that, just take, let's assume you're working an average year, and just take what you made last year and divide it by that number of hours that you work. Probably some of you work as many as 2,000 hours, and some of you work as little as 1,500 or 1,600 because you take 3 months off. But figure out, good for you. Figure out what it is that you're working approximately. Divide your total income, that your income's your salary, distributions, everything, net income, total income you make, by your hours, and kind of figure out what you're making on an hourly basis. Or take your total collections as probably a more efficient way to look at it. Take your total collections and then divide that by what the hours you're working, and that gives you your production per hour. Yeah. You can kind of look at it both ways: your income per hour, production per hour, and kind of see how those are different. And then you're kind of able to tell yourself at that moment, almost anyone I can hire is going to be able to do a job better than I will be able to,
and for less money.
I mean, even the most expensive attorneys that or most expensive consultants that I have to talk and work with, are still they're hundreds of dollars an hour, and some are very high, $100 an hour rates, but those are still less expensive to hire than me
doing it yourself,
trying to do it myself and figure it out on my own.
And more efficient.
Yeah, I waste countless hours in doing things I don't really understand. And I think that's what you're pointing out with that podcast, episode 26, is we really highlighted each, the value of each role, and how specialized these roles really are. And I think it's really important for dentists to really outsource as much as possible and stay focused on high production clinical activity if your goal is to really have a profitable, efficient practice. And if your goal is to have many locations, then that's a slightly different goal, but you still have to look and say, what's the highest value per hour work that I can do, and keep moving towards that. And that just involves replacing yourself with an associate and moving on to the next task that's highest value to you.
So the question then is, what could have happened if you kind of just jumped to your first assumption? I'm too busy. I need to hire an associate. I need a partner like now. What could have happened if you did that, assuming that was the real problem and it wasn't the real problem? What are some of the downsides to that you've seen?
Well, I think for me, one of them would be that you end up not making good use of those dollars. So you hire the associate, it just takes away from your personal production. You're not able to replenish your schedule with enough new patients because you don't have enough money going to marketing, and you don't have a good new patient inflow, and you just end up making less money.
Yeah, you pass your production to the new guy to
and
keep him busy.
Yeah, and then you end up finding yourself.
That's not uncommon.
Yeah, it's not uncommon. And so I think there's another factor that can happen is you just find that you rush into hiring the wrong person. So you instead of taking your time to find the right cultural fit for your practice and find someone that you really get along with well, and that
you kind of take whoever's out there asking for a job.
I got to find someone the next 60 days, next 30 days. I'm just going to hire someone, and then that results in you feeling like, that results in just wasted cash.
Yeah, not a good
an
fit.
Associate doesn't really pay for themselves right out of the gate. It takes a while for a dentist to effectively train, effectively delegate, get the schedule organized properly to where you're not just eating into one person's production and passing it on to another. It takes months, and usually in the first few months you're not really making money. And so if you don't get the right cultural fit, it just ends up being a waste of time and money too.
You part ways eventually, and
yeah,
it's kind of a waste. Okay. Number two, a source of pain or a pain point people feel frequently is that the practice doesn't earn enough money. So the pain would be like, I just don't feel like I'm earning enough money. My income's not high enough.
Yeah.
Maybe a little undefined, maybe a little generic, but that's pretty common too. People feel like I'm just not making enough money, and there could be a lot of different reasons for that. One of the assumed sources of pain is that we'll hear that my one location isn't enough. I just can't make enough money from this one location.
Yeah.
Like I have to have, there's this guy over here or this company over here that's made more money from more locations. So, I'm not making enough money. I assume it's because I only have one location. Therefore, the assumed fix for that is I got to have more locations.
Yeah.
So the question is that could be true. It could be true that would help make more money. It could be true that would be a good personality fit and a good skill set, fit for maybe you're really entrepreneurial in nature and you do like that. So it could be a good fit for the practice, but also might not be. And there could be other reasons why you feel like you're not making enough money. So let's talk about some of the reasons why someone might feel like they're not making enough money.
Yeah. Well, and I think you see this in the restaurant industry a lot, and you see it in retail, where business owners feel like they're not making enough money, and the solution's always open another location.
Another store.
Yeah, you see this with a lot of restaurant chains, and that's not always usually it's, the only time when it's right to open another location is when you have something that is really unique and it's well documented.
It's working in the
first location, making good money, and you're just duplicating it.
Yeah.
And that, that requires a good team, a good operations manual, good processes, good systems, It requires good marketing
and a personality,
and it requires I would say it just requires the right personality to continue to manage a larger and larger
because the
enterprise.
set of sacrifices and trade-offs you're going to have to make by getting more locations and even getting more money and more revenue, more collections. The sacrifices you're going to have to make in order to achieve that are sacrifices not every personality type's willing or able to go through.
Yeah, and I think that oftentimes it's, instead of needing to open a new location, it's just profitability needs to be improved, or you're taking, like you said, you're taking the too many of the wrong kind of insurance plans, or your fees might just be too low and you haven't adjusted them in quite a while, or maybe you're earning enough profit, but collections just aren't
they
as
need
high
to grow
as they
where
need to be.
you're in a location that does have more capacity through more efficiencies.
Yeah.
Maybe you are profitable, but you do just need to grow your collection. So that could be like a marketing issue.
It could be a marketing issue,
staffing,
internal and external. It could be diagnosis. It could be treatment presentation. It could be how you sell dentistry.
Okay.
I mean, there's just
could be your hours.
It could be the
your
hours
days.
that you work.
Yeah.
It could be maybe rearranging your space to add another operatory in a creative way that allows you to have more productive capacity. I think there's a lot of things you'd want to explore before you just say, it's time to open another location. Because there's some downsides of just doing it too quickly.
Well, I was going to say too. This is a frequent complaint. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Just feeling like that you just don't earn enough money.
Oh yeah.
But part of the problem that I notice too is that sometimes it's just kind of a lack of organization or a lack of a plan with the money that you do earn that makes you just feel kind of anxious about it. Like I don't know where my money's going, or it just feels like there's not enough left over sometimes. And sometimes when you break it down for people in what their net worth is and how it's growing, or what money they do earn and where it's going and how it's affecting them, just being more organized and having a bit more of a plan on where they're headed can kind of alleviate that stress. And the problem turns out to be it's not that you're not earning enough money, you're kind of unorganized and you don't know where it's going, and it feels really stressful.
Yeah, and once you do have that plan and you are making progress and you see your net worth improving and you see that you're on track to where work's going to be optional in the next few years, or at a point that seems early enough to you, then you just kind of don't feel the stress. I think I agree with that.
Yeah, so my question for you would be, from like an entrepreneur standpoint, if someone tries to push multiple locations solely for the fact of like, I got to earn more money, so I'm going to do this, what are some of the downsides to doing that if that's the only motivation and it turns out that the systems aren't in place, or they're not the personality type to go do what it's going to require and take to achieve it?
Well, I think there's just I think everyone has like a certain amount of drive that they want to do more. Everyone wants to do more. Like everyone wants to do more in their life.
No one wants to feel stagnant,
more.
Even if it's successful. You don't want to feel like you're stagnant.
Yeah, and I think that some people define like that differently than others. And if you're highly driven by like having like more of a peaceful schedule, just more of a like more life balance, and you want to be able to just get away from work and relax and kind of have that peace of mind, like to turn off the lights and put down the drill and that the thing's over. I mean, the larger the operation you get, like the less likely that reality is. The bigger your operation gets, the more complicated it will become for quite some time.
Yeah.
At some point down the road, you'll be able to, have nothing to do with it. But it's kind of, the bigger your operation gets, inherently, the more
it'll require from you.
The more it'll require from you from just a time standpoint.
Oversight.
You won't be able to just turn it off when you want to.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big driver for a lot of dentists, is trying to figure out, are you the type of person that really enjoys systems and you enjoy training, you enjoy seeing other people do what you've done, and you see an associate come in and be able to train them and teach them, and those kind of things are motivating to you. You need to be able to have it to improve patient care in a way that allows it to be bigger than just you. I mean, sometimes those are motivations that drive a lot of dentists, and that's they love the idea of having an enterprise that replicates what they do, and I think that's really motivational to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it's not usually the money that's driving that. I mean, usually it's bigger than the money, and so when you chase the money, and you just assume that by opening more locations, that's going to help you alleviate the "I want more money" problem. What I typically find is people who want more money as kind of the primary driver, they also want more. They want more money because they want more time, and they want to be able to have more flexibility.
I was going to say, those are the two competing interests. When you start having a bigger and bigger business, you can't want to hold on to all of your extra time and have a lot of extra money at the same time. They kind of they don't go hand in hand right off the bat. Yeah.
So I think that it's okay to I think the general recommendation is never stop pushing yourself, never stop growing, but just continue to take incremental steps like we've talked about in previous podcasts. Incremental steps are always better than big changes. And opening a second location is not the first incremental step to growing your income. I mean, again, measuring profitability, making sure you reorganize your insurance plans, looking at your fee schedule, looking at your efficiencies, looking at your office layout.
Maximize current space.
Yeah, looking at marketing, looking at your processes and systems and treatment presentation. All that stuff is more important than opening that second location. But once you get that all done, then there's this moment where now you're going to be able to scale and move along.
Okay, so let's hit one more, a kind of a similar pain point. The pain point would be, I feel like I'm always tight on cash. Like cash flow is really tight, but the assumed problem is that I have debt. Debt is causing me to feel tight on cash. And these are really common conversations, right?
Yeah.
Someone starts to feel a little pinched in cash flow, and the easiest scapegoat is always debt. If I just got rid of my mortgage, then that would solve the problem. Or if I hurried and got rid of the debt a lot faster, then these problems would go away. So the assumed conclusion is that, or the assumed fix is that I need to go and pay off my debt as fast as possible, and often at the expense of other things, like growing a business or investing for retirement. So let's talk about some of the other, maybe we could talk about some of the questions you've had in the past, where clients have felt that way, examples of where they feel just kind of like tight with cash flow and immediately blame the debt and just want to like stop everything to get rid of it. Can you think of any that come to mind?
Well, I remember like back in like 2014 or 15, somewhere in there, I got a phone call from a client that was really stressed out about their debt, and they wanted to pull all their money out of their retirement accounts and pay it off in order to finally feel like they could free up their cash flow.
Yeah.
And that would have cost them, at this point looking back, they didn't have huge balances, but it still would have probably been a 6-figure mistake.
Yeah.
Right. It was a big, I don't want to say that's not huge. That's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
You're talking $100,000 mistake. It could have been worse, but between the penalties they would have paid and the lack of growth that they would have had over the last few years, they probably would have saved, $20,000 in interest or something, but given up $100,000 in net worth to make that happen.
But that exchange of like getting rid of the debt, that's so emotional. Yeah. It feels so tangible that it almost like outweighs everything else.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people listening would be like, I would have never done that. And I think it's surprising. Like remember this person that called is super rational, and they listened to the advice and that I gave, and they didn't end up doing it.
Yeah.
But that was the first reaction, And,
yeah.
And I think a lot of us have that tendency to, when we feel like we're tight on cash, we attack debt as quickly as possible.
It's logical. It's like, yeah, if you didn't have any debt payments around, yes, you would have more cash flow.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have any debt around, in most cases, you wouldn't have the dental school education.
Yeah.
Or the practice or the building or the equipment.
Yeah.
Or the TIs.
And I think a lot of times there's a point where debt reduction is essential. And there's a point where you want to just stop taking as much risk, because that's all debt. That's what debt does, is you borrow money to take a risk. You borrow money for school to take a risk. You borrow money for your practice to take a risk. And when you take that risk, you can keep taking risks like indefinitely. And that's what, Bear Stearns did in 2008. And they got leveraged, 40-1. And that caused them to, go under. Like there's a point where it's like, all right, look, stop taking so much risk. Yeah. It's time to start paying off the debt and de-risking your balance sheet.
Yeah.
But that's usually not the first reaction you should have when your cash flow is tight.
Yeah. So what are some other things that could be the problem when cash flow is tight? We've talked about, if you imagine that periodic table of elements that we talk about, the middle row, there's four boxes, 4 elements in there. The middle row is where your money goes. It's cash flow. 3 of those are expenses. It's your personal, we call it burn rate. That's your personal spending. Another one is debt rate, which we're talking about. And then another one is tax rate. And so it's quite possible that maybe it's not the debt. Oftentimes it's the personal spending.
Yeah.
It's the personal spending kind of like choking out your ability to save money, or ability to pay down a little extra debt.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't realize that your personal spending is just like way out of control. But you just don't have a reference point, and it doesn't feel out of control to you because you've gotten used to it over the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
So it feels normal.
Yeah.
But you might be spending $5,000 or $6,000 more a month than the average person at your income level, and just have gotten used to a lifestyle that you didn't realize you're going to have to start backing off of. And I think that's an unfortunate thing that a lot of us have to go through, whether it's with dieting and exercise or cutting our spending or anything else that's a habit that you've built over time. They're not easy to change, but the fact that they're not easy doesn't mean that you don't have to fix them. I mean, you at some point, that if your personal spending is just 30% higher than the average person with your income, no amount of like debt reduction or change or shift is gonna solve that problem.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna kind of back up to you a little bit and just mention sometimes, and we just did an episode on this. It's episode 102 about the snake venom and debt.
Yeah.
How snake bites, snake venom relate to debt.
One.
Yeah, it's classic.
My kid
episode.
liked the picture on the podcast episode. You had an orange snake on your arm.
I did. Do we know what kind of snake that was? Anyone? It was like
kind of a jungle snake.
It was a jungle boa. I don't know.
It wasn't even venomous.
It was just shrugging their
I think it was a
shoulders in the
fake
room.
snake that Jeff designed.
It wasn't real in
I don't
studio.
know.
I didn't really have that
such a thing.
on my arm.
We'll see.
Yeah. Anyway, episode 102. Sometimes that like emotional need to just want to get rid of debt really fast. Sometimes it just comes from a lack of understanding the role that debt plays in your situation, and the role that debt actually has in a business owner's life. And how sometimes it's okay. And what are the parameters where it's okay and where it's not okay. So sometimes it's kind of a lack of understanding about that.
Yeah, so like you said, sometimes it could be taxes are the problem. It could be debt. It could be spending. But I think the other side of this equation is it's and I'm not advocating for avoiding the debt, the tax, and the spending. But I am saying that most of the problem with cash flow, in my experience, is because you're not doing things right on the revenue side of your business. So you're not making enough money. When people have tight cash flow, it's because they're typically not optimizing the investment they made in student loans and in their practice.
So they're in a practice in a facility that could be doing $1 million, but they're doing $650.
Yeah.
And there's just things that got to change in the practice to make it grow.
Yeah, and you're going to have to, and rather than like pay off your debt, invest some money. Like, I mean, I sent out this thing on Facebook last night that I thought it gave some interesting feedback.
Facebook had a lot. Yeah. And Facebook gave some killer feedback. LinkedIn was like crickets, man.
Yeah. I don't think anyone does
responds on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn's like, what? You want me to do anything? I thought this was a place for posting magazine articles from Forbes. Anyway,
quotes from
I sent this question out on Facebook, and I said there was a student that emailed me this week and said, I got 3 schools to pick from, and one school was the most expensive, and the other 2 schools were a little bit cheaper. One was like $580. One was going to be like $380, and one was going to be like $320.
All the dentists in their 50s were like, what?
Yeah, everyone's like, what happened?
Change your field of occupation.
Yeah, there was people saying don't go to school. There was someone that commented, he said, any place that this was not a dentist or a dental related person at all.
Yeah.
That he just started commenting any industry that would ask someone to borrow $500,000, I would reconsider my career.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I get where you're coming from, but you know,
It's a pretty good career.
there's a pretty good career. It actually makes the highest average income in the country, but you know, just saying.
Hey,
you know,
just guarantee yourself like a 30-year trajectory of killer income and steady.
and all you have to do is just sit through this clinical training and sit through school for these 4 years, okay? And then you're fine.
Just sit there. That's it.
Just do your thing.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that I'm pointing out is that there was some comments I thought were interesting about, you know, sometimes certain schools may not prepare students as well as others, and I think that's a fair comment. I mean, that you can't say all consultants are the same. You can't say all schools are the same, and you can't say like I think people make that argument quite a lot. Like, well, every school is all the same.
You're learning the same stuff. Pick the cheaper one.
I mean, I didn't go to the best schools. I wasn't able to, didn't have the ambition to until later on in my life when I realized how important school was. So the schools I went to were good schools. Let's say they're high quality, like upper tier schools, but I didn't have like the vision or the
you
desire.
weren't like at 15, like
I wasn't like
on
I'm
an
going
Idaho
to Harvard.
farm.
Yeah.
You weren't picking potatoes one day like I'm going to Harvard.
Yeah, and all my, you know, but I think the common like thread among peers is like, oh, it's all the same. They teach you the same stuff.
Yeah.
It's all the same books.
It's school, isn't it?
It's the same books. And
the same books.
and so, and I'm like, okay. So if in this thread in Facebook, there was this comment where somebody said, look, if you end up having to go back and do like, you know, a ton of continuing education and
just to make up
for the lack of like clinical training you had and the experience that you would have gotten from the right residency program, I mean, you're basically just, you're going to pay for it somewhere.
Yeah.
So you're going to pay for it by, you pay for it in a more expensive education, or you pay for it by, you know, having to go back to school and continue to get more and more education. To some degree, I don't think there's any right or wrong answer here. I think a lot of it just depends on the individual and how much natural ability they have to be, you know, a high stamina, hardworking, personable dentist, and patients don't really know where you went to school. It's more about, did school prepare you well?
Yeah.
To need more, do you need more training when you're done?
Yeah.
Or are you ready?
Yeah.
You know, and so I think as it relates to this kind of concept we're talking about with debt is, in a lot of times, if you've made this investment, maybe the school investment you made wasn't as good as the next person's school investment. Like maybe you really didn't get as much out of school. And so when you got into practice, you also went right into practice ownership. Didn't have a lot of mentorship and didn't have a great associate job. And you got right into practicing, and you had a different school experience and less training after school. Yeah. And you borrowed almost as much money as the person who went to the best program. Yeah. And you borrowed just as much money to buy the practice as the next person.
Yeah.
But you're not quite as capable or as prepared. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. That's happened in my life, where I've had to pay the price for this at different points in my career. And now, you know, what you end up doing is you have to get some more help during your career in order to make up for some of the lack of skill that you might have in these various areas. Yeah. And that's where good practice management consulting can come in. That's where good coaching can come in. It's where a good financial advisor can help, a good CPA, good attorney. I mean, you just have to, if you get to the point where you feel like I'm not making enough money and debt's really the problem and I'm going to turn around and pay it off, it may be that you just don't have you're not collecting enough and your income's not high enough. And in order for that to happen, you're going to have to invest some money in some outsourced help and find the right team to help you grow and develop. Everyone has to do this to some degree, and there's nothing wrong with it. I just think too many dentists feel like that's giving up, or that's quitting, that's failure. And so, it feels like too expensive. How could you possibly think about investing more
after
money
all you've already paid?
After you've all that you've already paid. And I think the truth is, you know, someone who continues to grow and develop often has to put paying off debt to the side in order to continue to develop and grow and for a while, for an uncomfortable period of time. Yeah. If you listen to like Dave Ramsey's show, you'll hear a paradigm that's driven to the average consumer around debt reduction. and how we should eliminate that as quick as possible. And that there's millions of people, I mean, tens of millions of people, probably even, I would guess a third or more of the population, or half of the population. Like if you gave them a choice to pay down debt or build some liquidity and invest for growth, they would attack the debt. Like, and I'm not, it feels to me like the more mature people get, they realize there is an excessive point that where debt is too, there is a point where debt is too excessive. Yep. But for the most part,
or the type of debt,
yeah. But for the most part, there's a point where debt should be reduced and a point when it shouldn't. And I think that when most people feel this pressure of cash flow around debt, it's because they don't have a healthy enough business.
Yeah.
And that's the issue.
And so a couple other little fixes I was thinking about too. Sometimes the answer for the cash flow, it might be the debt, but it might not be pool all your resources for the next 15 years to get rid of it. It might be just refinance a couple loans, or take that huge practice loan that you thought you wanted to pay off in 5 years and stretch it out a little bit because that's a little unrealistic, or the real estate loan or the equipment or something.
Yeah. Or cut some of the overhead that might be good overhead at some point down the road, but it's not essential for right now.
Yeah.
Like I've had to do that several times where I'm like, this would be a good place to spend money eventually.
That's how you refer to me usually.
But, not now.
Ryan is overhead line item 3.
Yeah, but like Monday mornings, that's usually what you say the first thing. Ryan, I think that you'd be good to pay for one day. Not this week.
I think that's a really good though thing to think about.
Yeah.
And it's not always people. Sometimes it's just things you're spending money on. Like I can see a scenario in which where certain marketing expenses really are quite useful at some point down the road, but they're not right now. So an example for us, like ones. There's 17 to 20 different places we could spend money on marketing. But we've had to say, well, we can only afford 3 of them.
Yeah.
And these are the 3 we're going to pick, even though items 4 through 17 would help bring in new patients.
At some point we'll do them.
They don't fit today.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times that you can, in a dental practice, you'll just see people spending money on certain types of technology, certain types of marketing, certain employees, certain patient-driven appreciation events that really are good, but they're not essential.
They're not driving the new growth.
I mean, it's if you don't have an emergency fund, if you don't have liquidity, if you don't have a nice cash cushion, and you're worried about like eliminating debt to free up cash flow because that's the level of stress you're feeling, then your practice isn't healthy enough. And you probably just need to reassess why is it not as healthy as it could be.
Okay. So to wrap things up, we'll kind of talk about the moral of the story, back to the cast and the arm and the wrist and the elbow, which is an expert can identify problems faster. That's the truth.
No question.
So, if you think about the difference between the doctor who my daughter saw in the first place and then the specialist we ultimately went to solve the problem, was the first doctor a bad doctor? The general family doc? Of course not. He's probably helped like hundreds and thousands of people, but it was really, the specialist had just that narrow focus. He only works on only specific things and had seen that before. I mean, without doubt, he's probably like squeezed someone's hand before and felt like, oh, the pain's there, and then known that it's actually in the elbow. You've probably seen that hundreds of times before.
Yeah.
So, going to someone who's seen your situation, whether that's a marketing expert or a consultant or tax or legal or financial advice, it helps when people have seen your exact situation hundreds of times over and over again.
Yeah, big time. I just don't think you can overemphasize that enough. I like the way you said it. The specialist just knows how to solve the problem faster. Mm-hmm. And I feel like in 1 hour of conversation with a dentist, I can solve more problems than I might be able to solve in 10 hours with another occupation.
For sure.
And so I'm not saying, a specialist is smarter in all areas. A specialist is only smarter in the area
that he specializes in.
Yeah. And so when people say I specialize in high income, like when financial advisors say I specialize in high income professionals, I'm like, do you mean engineers, doctors?
Yeah.
Are you talking about
attorneys,
employed doctors, or private practice doctors?
Yeah.
Dentists or doctors?
Yeah.
Attorneys or
partners in attorney
talking about
firms.
You know, it's really generic.
It's very broad. Yeah.
And it's not that helpful.
Yeah, because the wealthy oral surgeon is very different than the wealthy tech startup guy that's got everything tied into these, stock options or something. And those are two different.
Or a high income executive, or even an attorney is very different from a dentist.
Yeah.
Even though they might be making the same money and they both run practices.
With 10 people.
Yeah. Both have 10 employees.
Yeah.
I think the thing that we're highlighting though is that the specialist has the ability to hear the pain and know that the solution is in a different area.
Mm-hmm.
And the pains that we've listed today, you can tell they're not driven by some financial factor that we could apply to all people. They're behavioral. They have to do with your occupation.
Yeah.
They have to do with choices you're making in your job.
Right.
And we know, that the important thing about any advice, and we're not just talking about financial planning here, we're talking about all types of outsourced services, is they should be able to hear the pain you have and know how to solve the problem faster. And that's why you're paying someone, is it's saving you time. Because like, instead of having to go to the doctor 2 or 3 times like Ryan did before he finally is able to go and see the specialist.
Well, it made the problem worse. I mean, that's kind of the point too. If you apply the wrong solution, or apply a solution to the wrong problem, you can make the problem worse. In the case of my daughter's arm, it was actually making it worse by having her wrist immobile and her elbow flopping around for a month.
Yeah.
It made it worse.
Yeah.
And we see that with people jumping right to implementation of financial products to fix a perceived pain point.
Yeah.
And implementing the wrong type of product or strategy that actually, makes the problem worse. You gotta fix that problem and then address the real problem.
How many clients of ours end up like coming to us with a fully baked financial plan that you have to unwind?
Yeah, and it's hard. It's
like
to do
a third
sometimes.
of our clients.
They're
like,
That's how we meet most people.
Yeah, like I don't think something's not right. I still have pain.
Yeah,
and I don't know what.
But I applied these solutions.
But they told me, I went to the doctor.
Yeah,
the financial planner, and he gave me this, and I thought it was what happened, but really you went to a general practitioner. That person gave you the generic solutions that he's giving to everyone, and then you realized like 10 years in that like this didn't really solve my pain. And the thing about financial pain is it's slow and it takes a long time to identify that it's a problem. If you don't start right out of the gate with the right specialist, you might be 10 or 15 years in before you realize that the solution that you're applying to your problem is even the wrong one.
Wrong solution, wrong problem.
Usually the people that come to us that have this like kind of long-term pain, we're talking about people in their late 40s, early 50s that started 15 years ago. And now they're something's feeling wrong now.
They've been implementing this solution for a long time, but it's not fixing the pain that they felt the whole time.
No.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I just think that's really, it's can't overemphasize how important that is.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Thanks everyone for listening today. Check out the Dentist Money Show on YouTube. You can see our new chairs that we're sitting in. You can see visibly that we are so much more comfortable in studio.
And they're not new, but they are here. They look new.
They look new and they feel better to sit in.
Yeah.
But check out the Dentist Money Show on YouTube, and you could see these chairs. And
you can check them out.
You can check out the chairs, okay? Give a little thumbs up. YouTube has a little thumbs up and thumbs down. Just hit
a thumbs up.
Hit a thumbs up. It's fun. It releases dopamine in your system to hit a thumbs up, and it gives us a little too.
Yeah.
We'd appreciate that. If you want to talk to us about any of the financial pain you're feeling and what kind of solutions you've tried to implement or what solutions might be most appropriate in your situation, go to dentistadvisors.com. At the top of the page, there's a link to schedule a free consultation. On our calendar, we'll have a conversation about your questions and try to point you in the right direction. Or you can just call us.
Yeah.
The old-fashioned way.
833 DDS plan.
833 DDS plan.
You know what I want people to do, and I want to start doing this more frequently, is I want to encourage people to email us or comment on the YouTube channel or comment on our Facebook page. On any of our posts, just tell us what question you have that you'd like us to discuss at the next show episode. Email Reese at dentistadvisors.com or Ryan at dentistadvisors.com. you just email one of us and ask us the question that you want to have covered in the next show. I just love to be able to get more of your questions covered. A lot of these episodes are based on questions that we're taking that come in during the week, but I think we're going to start just kind of actively soliciting.
It's really meaningful to do
more
that.
Of these.
So dentisadvisors.com/listen. You can go to the episode, leave comments there, email us Ryan or Reese at dentisadvisors.com, or find any of the social media posts that we do and leave a comment or a question there. We'd love to answer it. And thanks again for joining us.
Carry on.